welcome back to the holiday edition of Inside the Game with CNHI Sports. I'm George Bremer of CNHI Sports Indiana, and as always, we'll take you around the country to pick up some of the biggest stories out there today. Let's make our first stop in Boston with Bill Burt. We're now joined by Bill Burt for our weekly NFL spot. And Bill, this week seems like as good a time as any to start looking forward to the Super Bowl. We see the playoff chases starting to tighten up. The pictures are starting to become a little more clear here. Who do you like in the AFC and the NFC? And do you have maybe a surprise team to throw in there as well?
Yes. So I'm gonna go outside the box here because it looks pretty basic. I think if you picked Kansas City and Green Bay, you'd be in the majority. I'm going against both those teams, and I think Kansas City can beat anyone. They've been teasing us all year. They've had a lot of blowout wins that have been close at the end, and that's why I'm going against them. I think they've been playing with fire. And when you consistently play with fire, you get burned eventually. All it takes is one burn. And I'm gonna go in the AFC. I'm gonna pick Buffalo. And I don't want to say it came out of nowhere. Look, Buffalo still has something to prove, but something's clicking there. And this again, I go back to what we've talked about this all year. It's a different year, and they got something brewing there. And look, the Patriots played them in Buffalo and gave them a battle, and almost could have won the game if Cam Newton doesn't fumble the ball there on inside the 10-yard line. But I think that I just think they believe in the quarterback. They've earned the right to be here. And we could even talk like Indy's moving in that direction. Teams that have gotten a little bit better. So we're used to last place to first place. Well, that's not normal. That's freakish. What Buffalo's doing is methodically getting better, 3 playoff seasons in a row. And that hard work, diligence, belief, keeping a few of your key free agents, not letting them go. And I'm going to pick them. And in the NFC, I'm going with New Orleans. I know Kansas City beat New Orleans, but that team's got something. I like that team. And Breeze and Peyton, I like that combination. I like Taysom Hill as a sort of the screwball, curveball, whatever we want to call it. So I'm going against Green Bay. I don't believe in Green Bay, and I believe Kansas City, who has the best player on the planet, who is worth $500 million or whatever the hell he's making. I believe they've played with fire too much, and I think they're going to get burned. And if it might be Tennessee, or it could be Buffalo. And I'm not necessarily saying Buffalo's the best team, but I think in the NFC, I think New Orleans is the best team. I just think I don't think the stars have aligned for them, but they've got a toughness about them. So that's my Super Bowl pick.
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely have a physicality. There's no questioning that. And you've seen what they've been able to do with Drew Brees out. Now he's back, not himself quite yet. But it'll be interesting to see as he gets more comfortable and gets some more reps under his belt here, how that team improves over the last few weeks. I'm going to be stubborn, and I'm going to stick with my pick from the preseason. I feel confident in the Chiefs. That one, I'm not going on a limb there. I agree with everything you said about the Bills. I think they're one of the teams that caused a lot of trouble for Kansas City because of the way that they can play defense and because they have an offense that can keep the pedal down and score. And those are 2 things you got to do. I think that's the obvious formula right now with Kansas City. Be physical with them, get a couple stops on defense, at least make it a little bit harder on them as best you can, and then have an offense that's dangerous. You're not going to beat Kansas City 13-10. You're going to have to go out there and make some big plays yourself. I think Buffalo's got those pieces together. I think Tennessee's got those pieces together. I'll go with the Chiefs. That was my pick in the preseason. I'll stick with that one. I think in the AFC, the other team to watch, and you mentioned it's Tennessee. I just think they play so much differently than anybody else. The way you have to prepare for Derrick Henry and that offense, it's not the same, but it's almost like college teams preparing to play Navy or Army when you got to face that triple option. It's just something you don't see every week. It's a totally foreign concept. I think it's tough for a lot of teams to deal with. I think Tennessee is going to be a tough out because of that. I'll stick with the Chiefs in the AFC. And the NFC, it's a much bigger stretch now. I picked them in the preseason before their defense fell apart. I'm going to stick with Seattle. I don't have much faith in that pick, but I think Russell Wilson, maybe he can carry him through what is a wide open race out there. The Seahawks really have to show something. The defense has improved statistically the last few weeks, but they haven't been facing good offenses. It'll be something to see if they can do that in January when it matters.
So here's what I'll say about Kansas City. If Kansas City was playing at home with a crowd, I don't think they're losing. And that they're going to get the bye, which is a big deal. But I just think that the playoffs, as we've seen during the regular season, away teams losing, winning in great home stadiums, it happens because nobody's there. And even if you get 5,000 people, it's not the same. So the other thing on Tennessee is I just looked for Tennessee. I'm disappointed in them because I thought they were going to be a step ahead of where they were a year ago. And maybe they are, maybe expectations were higher this year. I just thought they're the team that should be Buffalo this year. They should be right now, 11-3, cruising to the number 2 seed, and not as good as Kansas City, but a team that could beat anybody. I just that's what, and for me, that's where they lose it. And then in the NFC, Seattle, I'm just I don't know what, I can't pick Seattle anymore. They got me killed in my knockout pool. I had them over that disastrous game 2 weeks ago. And so in Green Bay, I don't believe in Green Bay. New Orleans, beatable. So it's not a stretch to say Seattle couldn't get their act together and go on a run. And now they're doing what they weren't doing the first. They're playing a little defense. Something's up. Russell Wilson hasn't been the MVP. He disappeared. That guy's gone. He's still good enough to make plays. They still have, in my mind, I think Metcalf is the scariest receiver in the NFL. And that's a big deal when you get that big a target. He's more like a Gronky sort of tight end-ish wide receiver who's got speed and strength. So it's interesting because normally there's 4 teams that can win a Super Bowl. We get about 7 or 8, and I'm going to throw one at you off the board. And they're not even in the playoffs right now, but I brought them up last week, and I'm believing in them right now, and that's the Baltimore Ravens. Mm-hmm. Now, the Ravens got to get in through Miami or Indianapolis, I think, for the most part, and not easy. So right now, it's going to be tough for them to make it. I will say if they make it, they can beat anyone. I believe that, and I brought this up a week ago, and I'm now more impressed than ever. I know they didn't do it, they beat Jacksonville, but Lamar Jackson's got his mojo, and he's even better right now than he was a year ago with a lot of guys injured. So that team, in my mind, is scary. If they make the playoffs, I swear I think they could win a Super Bowl. I think Lamar Jackson is done being intimidated, and he has been for the last year and a half. I don't think he's afraid of anything right now, but they're going to make the playoffs. And right now, it doesn't look great. The Raiders are who I thought they were, and the Colts are tough. Can't get rid of the Colts. So look, I think you're going to be having some fun, and you may not have to worry about the Ravens.
I'll tell you, that's the team I was going to pick too, is Baltimore. And for the reasons that you just said, Lamar Jackson definitely seems to be back in a groove. That defense is scary good when it's all together and healthy. They just seem to be built for the playoffs. They can go in there and play with anybody. They can get physical with you. And now they've got that big playmaker that they need with Lamar back there. Mm-hmm. I think Baltimore's going to be a really interesting team. These last couple of weeks in the AFC are going to be very interesting. Mm-hmm. Miami has 2 games that are going to be really interesting how they play off. They play the Raiders this week in Las Vegas. The Raiders obviously struggling, but those East Coast, West Coast trips can be interesting from time to time. We'll see how that goes for them playing, halfway across the country, almost all the way across the country on Sunday. And then if they survive that one, they've got Buffalo in week 17, and you have no idea what the Bills will have to play for yet. If they've wrapped up the number 2 seed, that could be an interesting situation where the Dolphins might be able to win out and get into the playoffs. And if they win out and the Colts win out and Tennessee doesn't lose out, Baltimore could be sitting outside the playoffs with an 11-5 record. That's an incredible. We talked about it a little bit last week, but that's incredible. Either Baltimore or Indianapolis. If the Colts lose to Pittsburgh on Sunday, they'll lose most tiebreakers. Either one of those two teams could be sitting on the outside looking in with an 11-5 record. If you had told me that at the beginning of the season with the extra 7th playoff seed, I wouldn't even think that's a remote possibility.
Right. We're thinking 8-8 might get in, or 9-7. And I wrote that at the beginning of the season. I thought the Patriots and Belichick, I thought Cam Newton was going to be a little bit better, speaking of Patriots, and Belichick could worm his way into that 7th spot. And for a while, they're 2-5. All of a sudden, they're 5-5. And I'm going, whoa, the Patriots could be dangerous as a 7th team. The Colts didn't lose. The Ravens had that big win against Cleveland. No, if the Ravens had lost to Cleveland, I believe the Patriots, all of a sudden, things could have changed for the Patriots. Maybe they go to the Rams, play the Rams, and they approach that game differently, because that, in my mind, ended the season. They needed Cleveland to lose to Baltimore, to Cleveland. The Ravens needed to lose to Cleveland. They didn't. So, but look, again, there aren't, other than Kansas City, I will say they are separate from the rest. But there's a second and third tier teams that could beat them. Kansas City is going to get burned. Keep this, save this, tell Heather to save this. We'll run this in the playoffs. And if it's wrong, I hope she throws it away.
No, but they have been playing with fire all year, and that's the absolute case. And they've relied so much on Patrick Mahomes to just bail them out, which he's done on more than one occasion, and which he's perfectly capable of continuing to do. But when you do that, more often than not, NFL history does not look favorably on that situation. No matter how good your quarterback is, no matter the fact that he's the best player in the league, when you continually put yourself in positions where he's got to be the superhero in the fourth quarter and win the game, sooner or later, somebody's going to shut it down and get that victory. The ball bounces the wrong way. A tip pass, anything can happen and can derail that. So I think that's what's so interesting here as we enter these last 2 weeks of the regular season and get into the playoffs. I feel like Kansas City is, as you said, a step above everybody else, but it feels pretty wide open in both conferences, really.
Yeah, I do. I agree. Again, like Tennessee's got that dangerous way about them. The Colts got that danger. There's a lot of danger. Maybe the point is there's a lot of dangerous teams. And that's it. You could even say that in the NFC as well, other than the NFC East. And, the NFC probably not so much. But you got 3 or 4 teams right there near the top who are, they're good, solid teams. But this is the COVID year. And I think that's why not everything's a little sloppy. Guys aren't hitting like they've hit in the past. I see, plays near the end zone, safeties coming up and avoiding the hit. We've seen that with all teams, including the Patriots. So that's why this is where the unpredictability comes in. It's very easy to say Kansas City and Green Bay, I think both teams are going to lose.
Very, very possible. No doubt about it. A lot of storylines to follow here over the last couple of weeks. Thanks a lot for your time, Bill. We'll talk to you next week. And
hey, get that snow out of here. I'm sick of snow. All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks again to Bill for joining us. You can follow his New England Patriots coverage on Twitter at Burt Talk Sports. You can follow my Indianapolis Colts coverage at GM Bremer. Now let's talk the college game with Elton Hayes of CNHI Pennsylvania and Kevin Brockway of CNHI Sports Indiana. All right, now we welcome in Elton Hayes of CNHI Pennsylvania, Kevin Brockway of CNHI Indiana. Talk a little bit of Big Ten. And guys, the college football playoff is set. I'm not sure anybody's happy. It seems like everybody's upset with the way things turned out for one reason or another. What is your take so far on the Final Four teams, and specifically from a Big Ten angle on Ohio State being one of them?
The way I look at it is people should be happy that this is what we have. I mean, trying to get all of these teams assessed over a pandemic-shortened season when some teams couldn't play full schedules, others were able to. They were fortunate enough to. I mean, this is the best that they could. This is the best they could do. I understand some teams, and some fan bases complaints about everything, but in a normal year, I'd lend a little bit more credence to that. But I think with just everything that was thrown and trying to put everything together at the end of the season with these numbers spiking and programs being hit harder than others, I think we should be thankful that this is what we were able to get out of it,
Well, it's clear that Alabama and Clemson are the top 2 teams in the country. So maybe this is one of those years where you skip the 3 and the 4, right? You know what I mean? And just go to the BCS system. But that being said, there was a lot of debate about both Ohio State and Notre Dame and whether Texas A&M deserved to get in. Cincinnati, if, a team outside the group of 5, undefeated team, if they were deserving just to kind of see what they could do in that kind of a situation. But all in all, if you take a look at the CFP's top 10 and expand it, I don't understand the fascination with the Big 12. It was just, they got ransackled and embarrassed by Sunbelt teams the first week of the season, and yet you have 2 Big 12 teams in the top 10 for the New Year's Six bowls, and you have only one Big 10 school. That to me is quite puzzling. And you have 4 SEC teams with Florida and Georgia in there. A 3-loss Florida team, but a Florida team that certainly showed when Kyle Pitts was healthy against Alabama, they gave him all they could handle.
Yeah, I know that Kyle Pitts, one of the best players in the country. Speaking about that top 10, Kevin, going a little more specifically closer to home for you in Bloomington, IU, one of the teams with a real legitimate case here for a gripe. The Hoosiers not only get left out of the New Year's Six, they get passed over by the Citrus Bowl. They end up in the 3rd Big Ten Bowl, the Outback Bowl. They're going to play a Mississippi team that's 4-5 on the year. I know Tom Allen took the high road. There's got to be some anger, though, I would imagine, from the Hoosiers right now.
Well, there's certainly anger from the fan base. I can tell you that on Twitter. There are a lot of people that are really upset and feel a little disrespected. And it's interesting. We talked to Kane Womack as IU got back to practice this week, and he even mentioned the players saying that they're flying around and they feel like they have something to prove as well. And listen, Indiana hasn't won a bowl game since 1991, so there you go. You have that opportunity in front of you. It's still New Year's Day, quasi-New Year's Day Bowl. I know it's going to be on January 2nd. Still a good stage in Florida. It'll be on ABC Sports. So I think still a good opportunity for Indiana, but certainly I think the fan base, more than anything I've noticed, has been really, upset. And what's really interesting is that, Gary Barta, the CFP committee, guess who Indiana opens with next year at Iowa, September 4th. So there's your chance for a little revenge if you want to, extend it a little bit further.
That would be an interesting game. Get a few eyeballs on that in this state for sure. Elton, on the other end of the spectrum, Penn State had the opportunity. I think we saw 2 win South Carolina team in one of these bowl games. Certainly had the Nittany Lions wanted it. The opportunity was there for them to continue their season. They decided to just kind of shut it down. Can you talk a little bit about that decision and why that's the way Penn State went?
Well, it's funny, leading up into it the past couple of weeks, we asked a number of the players, hey, are you all open to playing another bowl game? Are you willing to do that? And of course, they gave us they told the company line, hey, any chance we can get to play again, we'll take it. We're just worried about going 1-0 this week. And, we had the post-game press conference after the Illinois game, and about, I don't know, I was driving home after I filed my stories. I was driving home and I saw on Twitter, Penn State announces it concludes its season. So I was like, all right, I guess it didn't take them that long. Coach Franklin said that after the game, he was going to speak with his captains and his seniors to determine a course of action. And I guess they decided, they proved enough. They won the season. They ended the season on a 4-game win streak. I think they felt good about the trajectory the team was heading on into 2021. And, I can't blame these guys. We spoke with Rasheed Walker a couple of weeks ago, and we just asked him about his personal sacrifices. And he said he hadn't seen his family since May, rather. And I know James Franklin's family is quarantined down south somewhere because his daughter has sickle cell anemia, and he didn't want to expose her. So his family's been away with him since June. So while I'm sure the fans would have liked to see another chance, have another opportunity to see Penn State play a game this season, I don't think anyone could blame the players and coaching staffs for being pleased with what they have accomplished and just wanting to pack it up and enjoy the time and see their families for the holidays.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It's a condensed bowl season this year anyway. The schedule now really tight. I think there's a bowl game Tuesday, I believe.
There was one yesterday, and there's 2 today. So
yeah, they're just going to keep on rolling along here. So I understand where the players come from. I think it was PJ Flex said something along the lines of Minnesota's another school that opted out. That at this point, there's nothing on campus. Nobody's here. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. You're basically asking these kids who've sacrificed so much for so long to stay on campus, practice a couple hours a day, and the rest of the day sit in their dorm room and eat boxed meals, and it didn't feel like much of a reward.
No.
I can see that point of view, certainly.
And you make a good point where you say with the condensed bowl schedule. I know for the Cotton Bowl last year, which was on the 28th, I believe Penn State flew out on the 23rd, spent 5 days in Dallas, were able to experience, Texas-themed, attractions. They were, had a lot of fun. They were able to meet their families out there. They were able to do some community service work at the hospital, with the bowl season being the way it is, I imagine these teams are flying in the day before, quarantining in their hotel rooms and their bubbles, playing the game, and then flying right back out. So, if this was a traditional bowl experience, I'm sure even with the pandemic, they would have found a way to make it work. But with just so much to, so much to gain and just so little reward, I don't think at least Penn State didn't think it was worth it.
Mm-hmm. We flipped the page a little bit here. Basketball season, Big Ten play has begun. A handful of games have been played across the conference. Already, we're starting to see the conference kind of cannibalize itself. I don't think that's a surprise. We've talked about that for a couple of weeks on this show, the power of this league and what might happen. Northwestern upsets number 4 Michigan State. Rutgers, I know it was a huge upset, number 19 Rutgers beating number 13 Illinois at home. But you're starting to see this. Do you guys think this is a pattern that we should expect for the rest of this basketball season? The Big Ten is going to be a really difficult league to win games in?
Well, if you look at last year, you had 4 teams tie for the league championship at 14-6. So what does that tell you? I think we're going to see more of the same this year. It's very interesting. I think Rutgers has emerged early as a team that's for real. They showed that last year wasn't a fluke. I think Ron Harper Jr. is playing as well as any player in this conference. And Steve Peichel has very similar to Tom Allen in football. I think Steve Peichel with Rutgers basketball has built something that's sustainable that lasts. The players believe in him. And Illinois with 3 losses early on, but 3 very tough losses, and Indiana will get them. And as for the Hoosiers, they have yet to play a Big Ten game, but they did close up a pretty tough non-conference schedule 5-2 with a win over Butler. So they are going into Big Ten play on a little bit of a high note. Armand Franklin playing well, and we'll see if we'll see this week what's going to happen with regards to the Hoosiers and trying to break through into Big Ten and move up in the standings a little bit.
Penn State returns after a 10-day break for finals and everything. They return to action at the Bryce Jordan Center Wednesday night against Illinois. So that's a game that I'm excited to see. Just, I know Penn State the last time they played knocked off number 15 ranked Virginia Tech by double-digit 20-point victory. Penn State, Penn State, they have a 10-day. There was a 10-day layoff between Virginia Tech and Michigan. I forgot about Michigan. They played Michigan 2 Sundays ago and lost a tight hard-fought contest down there in Ann Arbor. Closed a double-digit deficit and actually was leading near the end, but couldn't hang on. So that showed that even though there's a new interim coach in town in Jim Ferry, he's been with the program for 4 seasons. The players are buying in, and there really doesn't seem to be that much of a drop-off. Seth Lundy has really emerged and taken over this team. He's leading in scoring. You've got Isaiah Brockington, who was a Pat Chambers last year described him as an X factor, and he's really kind of not shed that label, but is really stepping out into a more prominent role in the offense and on defense. So it'll be interesting tomorrow to see Penn State play its second Big Ten conference game here with Illinois coming to town.
I'm wondering, just to take a brief look at a more national picture, huge game over the weekend, Gonzaga and Iowa. The Zags get the win by, I believe, 11. They also had an impressive win against Kansas earlier this year. Is Gonzaga a pretty solid number 1 right now?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, I think they're the best team in the country. I mean, other than, Baylor is the other team that you can make an argument, but I think what Gonzaga did to Iowa over the weekend puts Gonzaga and Baylor kind of in a different plane over the rest of the country right now. And we will. But it's a long way to go. A lot of injuries can happen. A lot of things can happen. Teams can go through up and down and lulls, but you got to credit Gonzaga because they play in the WCC, a conference they traditionally dominate. Although St. Mary's is okay, BYU every once in a while, but they loaded up on the non-conference schedule just to kind of show, hey, look, we're going to take on all comers here. We're going to build our resume so we can get that number one seed come March when the tournament will be in the beautiful state of Indiana.
Yes, it will.
Looking forward to that. Just the idea of having a tournament in March sounds really good. Having it here in Indiana, you can't get any better, right? Basketball heaven here. We all know this.
It is the basketball country.
Well, guys, thanks a lot for your time this week. I know you're ultra busy. We still got a little bit of football, basketball overlap for Kevin, at least for another couple of weeks here. But I think things are just starting to heat up on the basketball court. Plenty of things to come. Happy holidays, guys, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Happy holidays to you all as well.
Graphic coming on, or what's going
on
here?
I like the snow here. It's a nice touch.
Little holiday season.
I like it. I'm a fan.
Thanks again to Elton and Kevin for joining us. You can follow Elton's Penn State coverage at EHDC12. You can follow Kevin and the Indiana Hoosiers at Kevin Brockway G1. Now let's go talk with our national columnist, Clay Horning. Now we're joined by Clay Horning for our weekly spot. And Clay, there's been a lot of talk, and we just talked a little bit with the Big Ten guys about this, about the college football playoff, the way things turned out. It feels like really nobody's happy this year. I don't know. I guess maybe in some regard that's a win. You can hardly ever make everybody pleased.
Well,
maybe if you make everybody unpleased, you've at least.
You can make the case that if nobody's happy, that only makes it like every single other season there's ever been in college football. I have a few thoughts. One is that I think the committee just kind of threw up their hands and went, we could bring in A&M, but if it's not A&M, it's a 2-loss Oklahoma team, and Ohio State's going to go bonkers. And not just Ohio State, the entire Big Ten Conference is going to go bonkers. I did actually have a thought that, the college towns in the Big 12 and the SEC and the ACC are not the size of the college towns in the Big Ten. I wonder if they get more thought for that. But it just seemed like, yes, the Alabama, Clemson, well, you know what? Notre Dame's not clear, but I don't know who you put in front of Notre Dame unless it's A&M, but A&M didn't beat Clemson, but Notre Dame beat Clemson when the quarterback was out. It's just there's no way to make it okay. I'll tell you, the teams that I have a soft spot for are San Jose State, Coastal Carolina, Cincinnati, and I have less of a soft spot for Cincinnati simply because Tommy Tuberville once coached there. But anyway, they all go unbeaten, and San Jose State is playing Ball State in, what is it? I've written it. Oh, in the Arizona Bowl in Tucson. I guess there's a bowl called that. And Coastal Carolina is playing Liberty in the Cure Bowl. When I looked at what I wrote down, are they playing Cure in the Liberty Bowl? Anyway, they're playing Liberty in the Cure Bowl. I don't even know what the Cure Bowl is. And Cincinnati is playing. Now, there's a game. Cincinnati's playing Georgia in the Peach Bowl. But my goodness, find a place for these unbeaten teams to make a name for themselves. And then I thought, well, maybe there could be like a college football NIT. And that would be these 3 unbeaten teams and Notre or an A&M or OU, if you can talk them into it. I don't think OU would go for it, But anyway, I remember when I was growing up. It's very interesting now that BYU had the national championship somewhere in the 80s. I think it was the year George Rogers won the Heisman. I don't know why I put those things together, but anyway, sometime in the 80s, they won it by going unbeaten at a time when the polls were it, and the pollsters could not get away from unbeaten teams, and they were the only unbeaten team that season. What's interesting is that the BCS has at some level has said, okay, who are really the best 4 teams here? And that's why Cincinnati, Coastal, San Jose are not a part of this, though they're unbeaten. But at the same time, it's like the committee is going, well, they say who are they can make a case. They're saying who are the best 4 teams, but Notre Dame is not favored in a game over Oklahoma if they play that game. I don't know about A&M, but I was just looking at who's going to be a 4, 5, 6 point dog to Alabama. Well, Notre Dame, I believe I saw 19, unless I saw 17 and messed it up. But anyway, OU would be that team. But I don't think necessarily who would have the most narrow point spread is the determiner of who should play in the Final Four. But it is a better determination of who are the best 4 teams right now. Mm-hmm. And so it just sort of is a reminder that it's a completely imperfect system. You can't make it perfect. I mean, for crying out loud, we complain about the numbers 69, 70, 71, and 72 teams in March Madness. And I'll give you my I think favorite scenario would simply be Power 5 conference champions and 3 at-larges, with the hope that a team like Cincinnati would get in, maybe even saying with 3 at-larges from outside the Power 5, and that way your conference title game is absolutely an elimination game, and just make it 8 teams. But how long are we going to play football? I don't know. Even in a regular year. I mean, are we playing until January 30th or something? I don't know. It just is what it is.
Oh, no, there's no question. I do think the 8-team playoffs probably the next step. We know that won't happen before 2025 when the current TV deals expire. But after that, I think you just every year, whichever of the Power 5 conferences get left out, this year 2 of them. But every year there's got to be one. I mean, simple math tells you that. You always hear that conference.
And more than that, it's a game you want to see. I want to see the unbeaten mid-major because it's clear that what they know how to do is win. And sometimes it might surprise you that they have a team that can stand up physically against the Power 5s. Sometimes they just are better at the game than the Power 5s, though not in the same league physically, and can beat them the way, what am I thinking of? The way Mike Leach eventually started winning at Washington State. And, there are coaches that are out in front of everybody else schematically. There are coaches who do more with less, and are better at that than doing more with more. So anyway, yeah, absolutely.
Boise State made a really good run there. And I want to say the late 90s, the early 2000s, and they had a couple wins in BCS bowl games.
One of them was over OU at the Fiesta.
Yeah, the probably the most famous one, with the Statue of Liberty play and some of the things that happened there. So, I think to me, it's a little bit disappointing that some 20 years later, we're still having this conversation that Boise State wasn't able to open more doors for the Cincinnatis and the Coastal Carolinas of the world.
Yeah, well, that's true, and it's and even the way Boise State was opening them was just it was through a needle. They were, because they had to be like unbeaten for 2 or 3 consecutive seasons in the 4th season to begin high enough, to sort of, and then it's just it's too much for them to walk through. And so I would very much like a system that rewards get a non-Power 5, or if you have my idea where you go 8, at least make 1 at-large out of a non-Power 5, because we don't need to see Alabama, LSU, Florida, 3 from the same conference, whatever. So I don't know. It's funny. We argue about this stuff every season. It all seems and then we'll stand back from it and say, the whole point is that we argue that's what we want. It keeps us talking about the game, and now we stand outside of yet another circle and go, are we really talking about this during a pandemic? Who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like there's just this. But I will. It does irk me that they rewarded Ohio State, and I only sort of crystallized for me that the Big Ten changed their own rules so Ohio State could get to that title game despite not playing enough games. I mean, that's just it's just messy. I mean, yeah,
It's a mess.
not like the fix was in, but I don't know, and I don't know if I'm supposed to take Ohio State seriously because it beat two clearly, say, top 20 level teams in Indiana and Northwestern, or if I'm supposed to not take them seriously because they didn't play any top 10 level teams. They played two teams that were 15 or something and struggled with both of them. So, and they changed the rules to allow them in. So,
though in fairness, the rule was on the book for like 2 months. It wasn't like a long rule.
The rule was on the book, I think, so the Big Ten would be able to say when they started, look, we have a floor here. We're not going to allow a team to play 3 games and go compete, whatever. And then some months later, that idea that we had to make us look legitimate, it's hurting us now. We need to change it. Which doesn't delegitimize it necessarily, but it just makes it a bigger mess.
It's almost like this whole playing through a pandemic thing was difficult.
That's right. That's right. And once again, I'm happy they played the games, and I'm pleased that I'm pleased that there are a round of bowl games. I mean, I wasn't absolutely positive that OU would want to go bowling afterwards, and by the way, Trey Brown. I don't know if you watched the Big 12 title game. 2 big kickoff returns that created points at the end of each half. The touchdown, then a 3-pointer in the fourth quarter that gave OU a little bit of separation, and then makes the interception that ends the game. He's opted out of the bowl game because he's going into the draft. That has become a thing. Mm-hmm. I can play this far, but now I'm out. I don't want to get hurt. I'm going into the draft. It's a house of cards, man.
Kyle Pitts from Florida, tight end, probably should be in the Heisman Trophy talk. He won't be because we know that's a quarterback award now, but he's had an outstanding season. 12 hours after the SEC title game, he declared for the draft, and he's done. So that's definitely the way of the college football world right now, no question about it.
Yeah, and we have NCAA, well, not even NCAA legislation, but federal legislation recently introduced by Cory Booker that if it were to become the thing, would blow the lid off what the NCAA has sort of slowly come around to being willing to do. And then I think about a world in which that's the case, one of which was sharing profit 50-50 with the players in your revenue-producing sports. I wonder, but if you do that, do you at least then say, now you've got to stay for the bowl game, man? Or so. I don't know, but it's Barry Switzer talked about that he fed the monster that Bud Wilkinson had created, and everybody after him, if they are unable to feed the monster that he was able to perpetuate, they're not going to be long for this job. In a sense, we're all just feeding that monster. I don't think we ever, us growing up, we could have never imagined, 50 games to choose from to watch on a Saturday. So we're always playing catch up. And so anyway, just so perhaps we should let the CFP off the hook because they are only playing catch up themselves.
I feel like we've been all playing catch up since March in all areas of our lives. There's no doubt about it. I guess in some ways, having so much controversy over the 4 teams left is the one normal thing in 2020, maybe.
Yeah, and I'm not that we take any comfort from it, but yes, it is normal. It will always be that way. Not until there are 4 unbeatens and only 4 unbeatens in the Power Fives. And perhaps those who play divisional schedules played the more difficult divisional schedule in that year. Then it'll be okay. By the way, remember the year Kansas went to the Orange Bowl, lost 1 game under Mark Mangino? They dodged everybody that season except Missouri, who they beat. But anyway, it's crazy.
It's crazy, and there'll be more crazy to come, no doubt about it. Thanks again for your time, Clay. Happy holidays, and we'll talk to you again next week.
All right. Thank you. See you. Bye.
Thanks again to Clay. You can follow our national columnist at Clay Horning. And thanks again to all of you. We certainly hope that you're enjoying the holiday season. We hope you have a very Merry Christmas, and we'll talk to you all again next week.